Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and MBs. Welcome to Warui Deshou's Stream of 4. I am Shadon, son of Jim, ancestor or descendant of some random Irish prick I've never met, because I didn't check my genealogy, and I'm here to do battle with episode 7 of Vinland Saga. Not really, I'm just going to talk shit about it as usual. But join me as always is stalwart comrade and warrior in arms, the Subtle Doctor.
Yo, everyone. Yo, Shadon. I didn't expect you to go this direction in the intro. So I don't have anything. I don't have anything to play. Beast, man. I don't have anything to play off of that. But I think this is going to be a fun episode, Shadon. And do you want to know why?
I know exactly why you think it's going to be a fun episode, and funnily enough, I'm actually going to contend against that later in the talking point.
Oh, okay.
There's a big, massive question mark over this whole thing. But believe me, folks, we will cover that soon enough.
Oh, wait a minute.
We'll get there.
Seriously, though. That has nothing to do with why I think this is going to be a fun episode of Stream of Thought. Why I think it's going to be fun is because I feel like you have to... There's a tweet that's come across my timeline. And now, nary a more important tweet has come across said timeline, at least lately. So I need to put this to you and to all of you. Because I looked down a moment ago at my phone when we were doing prep and was like, oh my god, this question. All right, here it is. I'm going to lay it on you. It's important. You have to follow me here. You may get lost in the twists and turns, but all the forks and spoons are dirty. What do you use to eat your mac and cheese? What do you do? Because, I mean... Well... How do you consume it? You don't want to just go like out of the bowl like you're dare I say a Viking, right? You don't want to do that.
I think that's exactly the reason you should do it, just to be in tune with your Viking ancestry. Come on. Failing that, you can always pour it into a glass and just drink it. All right. Can you imagine doing that in public? Just like, macaroni from a glass. Macaroni from a glass.
I was going to say, go with tongs or like a skewer. Like you could use a skewer for you when you do barbecue. Just skewer like 5 to 9 shells and then there you go. Yeah. You're good. And
the obvious solution is
you look refined.
The obvious solution, you get a big milkshake. You pour your milkshake out onto a plate and you pour your macaroni and cheese into the milkshake and then you eat them both that way.
That's disgusting. And I don't want to hear about it ever again.
Well, you did ask the question. Don't open Pandora's box if you don't want to know why. I'm just saying, man.
This is fair. This is entirely fair.
Just fucking saying. All right, so anyway, we're here, of course, to talk about episode 7 or possibly episode 1, depending on what way you think of this particular entry in Vinland Saga's chronology, Normandy. But before we get to that, though, we do want to hopefully check on the polls. I think we had something last time, not least of which we need to answer the question of what Mario power-up is most suited to Bjorn.
Indeed. So our polls from before, it's funny, I just had them up on screen, and then for some reason I clicked off of them. So I'm going to take just a second to scroll down to them. It shouldn't take me that long. I hope the scrolling wheel is not too distracting. All right, here's the polls for episodes 4 through 6 of Vinland. Poll number 1. Which Mario suit is best for Bjorn? Well, 42% of you out there went with the obvious pick, I think. Tanuki. You did the thing that came into your head first, and you didn't really take time to think about the choices. 29% of you said frog suit, and bless you. Like, you are my people. Well, to be fair, frogs are known for, sitting on and living with toadstools and mushrooms. Yes. And that is Bjorn's thing. Yes.
So
it's like thematic consistency.
I'm just saying. Although, Jesus Christ, can you imagine Bjorn, set loose in the Mushroom Kingdom? It'd be a murder spree. Toad gets eaten fucking alive.
Just Goomba parts strewn about the world, broken Koopa shells and Koopa wings, Like,
I'm sorry, Bjorn, but our princess is another castle. Wait, Bjorn, what are you doing? Bjorn, no!
look what they've done to Bowser. Run!
Toad, why do you not have any arms or legs?
It will be the apocalypse. It would be worse than when Smithy came down from on high. Do you remember Smithy?
Remind me. Refresh my memory.
Super Mario RPG. Did you?
I never played it.
Oh, it was such a good game.
I was a Sega kid, man. I was a Sega kid.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, that game's worth going back to replay because I think the comedy holds up really well and it's a really solid turn-based foundation. But the villain is just a giant sword that descends from the heavens and plunges itself into Bowser's castle. And he kind of takes over the villain role, and so Bowser's deposed, and he ends up joining you because he wants to get his castle back. It's a great game. There's a nice Power Rangers parody in it.
Well, isn't Power Rangers itself technically a parody? But I
guess a nice Super Sentai parody or whatever you would. But anyway, so the only other poll is: would Askeladd have allowed Thorfinn to kill him in his sleep? 73% say nay. So that one was pretty lopsided, and I think I would agree with our voters on that score.
Indeed, absolutely. So thank you everyone for taking part in the polls as always. We will be having more coming up as the show progresses, so feel free to check them out. Doc will be posting in chat for you to get involved in. But for now, let's actually talk about episode 1 or 7, depending on how you look at it, Vinland Saga. And you might be thinking to yourself, what the fuck am I talking about? Have I gone back in time? Have I completely lost all of my marbles? And the answer is no, I still have just the one left. But anyway, so we were made aware, thanks to one of our wonderful patrons, Blinkaji, about how this episode fits into the chronology of the show versus how it fits into the chronology of the manga. In the manga, the events of this episode were the very first issue or volume, not like the 7th or the equivalent of the 7th in the manga's chronology. So you can, in theory, if you wanted to, like, if you've never watched Vinland Saga before, watch this episode first and then like cut immediately back to episode 1 and watch from there. Now, there have been other changes in the manga, such as the scene including Helga and Ylva that we've mentioned previously, that was inserted much earlier in the show's chronology versus the manga's. Now, I'm bringing this up for a very specific reason because it will be very important for a big talking point I have later about this particular change and ways in which I actually think it's a bad change for Vinland Saga and also ways in which I think it's a good change. It's not a simple black and white plus or minus here. But I want to make that clear as I relay the events going on here. That's something you want to keep in mind. So, without further ado. So, opening of the episode, the Vikings and the Danes are, they're going on summer vacation. They're having a breather from all the pillaging and plundering. They're just taking a break. This is where we reintroduced to Floki advising presumably the king of Denmark, of Floki, whispering in the ear of a king here. No surprises there.
I didn't even think of that. That's a good shout.
Yeah. But speaking of the king, the king's like, let's give her on a break, and then I will come along to lead an army. And my immediate reaction to that was, oh, fuck you, Robert Baratheon. I'm glad you're still getting work after Game of Thrones, you sentient lump of lard. But you ain't fucking moving from that. No. The only thing that was missing from the end of that scene was as he made his final statement was just for a flushing noise. It happens to be the toilet he sat on.
Yeah.
That should
for sure. Floki's just sitting there thinking, you could put a thought bubble right there, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. It's only a matter of time until I kill you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're going to bring him out the breastplate stretcher next. But anyway, so yes, the Danes and the Vikings are going to be recalled for a break. They're going to have, an off-season. And how does this affect Askeladd and his men, you might think to yourself, because now they're being called back because of the winter. Askeladd notes, after talking with Bjorn, who for some reason is eating fish rather than mushrooms, presumably he's got a upset stomach, I'm guessing. Because that's his, that's his staple food, mushrooms, isn't it?
Just, you got to bring the variety. You can't appreciate the sweet without the bitter, Shadon.
It's very true. It's very true. But Askeladd takes inspiration from some seagulls who are flying overhead and says, we'll go where the birds go to where there's food. In other words, we'll travel elsewhere and pillage and plunder them instead. There's no off day for us. What the fuck do you think this is? We don't get paid leave for pirates. Come on. So meanwhile, we cut over to a chivalry Let's Play in progress with red team and blue team attacking each other. And it's not really going very well for the attacking red team, I'll say that much, because yes, they do have a ram and all that, but the blue team, brought in crossbows and they're fighting them off. This, for context, by the way, is in France, along the Loire River, whatever that is in modern time. I'm probably butchering that. I can't even pronounce modern French properly, so I apologize profusely for that. But yeah, things are not going exactly very well for the attackers here. And so this is where Askeladd strikes inspiration, because he sees this fall and thinks to himself, oh, there's got to be a lot of treasure there, surely, a lot of plunder, this will be great. So if we ingratiate ourselves amongst the attackers and help them actually win the battle, we'll get some loot from them. And when I mean get some loot for them, as in rob them blind and just walk away and leaving them with only that, with nothing. So yeah. Now, I want to just actually very quickly talk about very specific elements of this scene before we cut to the part where it goes to like the OP. Which is that this is the point where Askeladd says, okay, Thorfinn, go and meet the camp and go and talk to them and tell them what our intentions are. That we will help you fight in exchange for gold, etc., etc., and then send a message back. And Thorfinn says, what, you promised. When is this going to happen? And Askeladd's like, oh, you little scamp, you. I'm pressing patting his on the head. And he said, all right, I'll do it if you bring back the head of a helmed captain. Now, I want to make something very clear, and just again, something to put in the back of your mind for the talking point I'm going to make later. At no point during this scene is it specified what Thorfinn actually wants from Askeladd. We know, because we've seen it happen in the previous episodes. Just put that in the back of your mind, especially in the context of how this works, assuming you're reading this in manga form, or if you decide to start this at the very first episode. Just keep that up here in your grey matter. This, by the way, is also the point where Thorfinn is now full teenage Thorfinn, like he's reached his final form, his final evolution. So he's good to go. So, indeed, Thorfinn sets off, and I didn't come up with this joke first, even though I was thinking of it, but it got said out loud in our Discord chat, so I'm going to have to again comment on, or have a credit Blinkaji for this one. This is the point where Thorfinn decides to completely destroy the tone of the scene by Naruto running his way down there.
It's funny that it has been branded the Naruto run, because, I think I said in Discord, I don't know if anyone replied or not, but I've seen, like, kids in anime doing that run for a while. Like, I remember that was how Gohan would run in Dragon Ball. So, I wouldn't necessarily... I mean, perhaps it was just popularized by Naruto. Everyone has their formative works, so I understand what you mean. But maybe this is not an intentional, like, he's doing it for tactics. Maybe it's just like, here's how kids run. Here's how we depict kids running. Even though Thorfinn is a very old sort of kid, right? He's not an adult, so we'll still do the ninja run or whatever.
He can't even legally drink yet. God damn it! All he gets is the fucking juniper berries.
Well, yeah, it's all the worst parts of Viking life and none of the benefits.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, I did kind of get the event slightly wrong there, in the actual discussion that Thorfinn has with Askeladd takes place after the OP, but anyway, that still otherwise happens. Like, I want this thing, and he's like, get me the fucking, a helmed soldier, like, or the head of a helmed soldier, like, someone important. So indeed, Thorfinn makes his way to the camp of the attacking red team, and after waylaying one of the guards who's like, who the fuck are you, kid, piss off, he is introduced to the general of the camp, who has freshly got off working from Spirited Away, because he looks like one of the people eating at the bar there. That was my first impression.
Yeah,
I was like, what the fuck is this guy? His name we will learn later, and I'm revealing it now, is Jabathe, or Jabba the. So, no surprises, how effective or, how effectual he'll turn out to be in the long run. Just kind of sitting there, barking orders, looking grotesque.
That dude was the worst. Like, we could talk about him after the summary, but holy shit, he was the worst. And I'm glad. So he was a general, because sometimes they would refer to him as Your Highness, and so I was like, is he like a French prince? But then the one guy at the end said, I have a message for General Jabba the Hutt. And so, yeah.
Wait, Does that mean that Thorfinn is basically C-3PO? I have a message for you.
Yeah. Basically, they did a Return of the Jedi here.
Can you imagine C-3PO running around and cutting people up with knives?
That would be incredible. That would be incredible. Just to see him. Oh my gosh! To see him wield a weapon.
I'm just trying to imagine Anthony Daniels now saying in his C-3PO voice, "I'm a cut you motherfucker," and it just doesn't quite come to me. I can't quite process it.
I know.
Anyway. So yes, they're having a discussion over dinner as to what's going on, what the situation is. So the fort is very well protected from the front, but it straddles a river, and there's no protection on like the riverbank there, so it's completely exposed from the rear. But the red team, the red French people, don't actually have any method of attacking from the river because there's no way to get to it. It's too deep. It's too high up upstream. Downstream goes to the sea, so you're fucked, mate. You can't get up there. It's not going to happen. So that's made clear, and Thorfinn says, "Look, either we help you and you give us, the rewards we asked for, or we'll go and help them instead. And if you kill me, we'll go and help them instead anyway." And so Jamafe says, "Ho, ho, ho." And then he drops Thorfinn into his expertly concealed Rancor pit. No, I'm kidding. So Thorfinn is allowed to leave and send out a signal through of shooting some flaming arrows into the air. And the plan is basically they're going to attack tomorrow. Oh, well and good, Thorfinn's to remain with the mercenary camp with the red team for the meantime. And we have a scene of some of the troops on the river, the blue team. They're like, oh, whatever, I'm going to ship, who gives a shit? And then, holy shit, there's a dragon next to the moon, oh my god! Because it is Viking era times, it's no surprise that they're all a bit superstitious, a bit cowardly. But that's also the hint of what's to come, believe it or not. So, following morning, battle kicks off. General guy's like, I don't believe this guy, so we'll kill the kid later and all that. It's going to be great. And he's...
it's going to be great.
Yeah.
He does say that.
He's just generally being about as, useful and as effective as a doorstop made out of lint. So, fuck that guy. So, they attack again, and... it goes about as well as you'd expect. Honestly, the Englishmen in Monty Python attacking the French castle, they have more chance of winning, to be quite honest. And I really actually now wish there was a cut scene from this of, Thorfinn just watching a cow fly over his head. Fetchy la vache. Fetchy la vache.
I'm having a hard time catching my breath, because it really is that. I don't know why I didn't think of it. I saw you guys talking about Monty Python in the Discord, and I was like, "What? Why? Why are they bringing that up? Huh?" And for my dumb brain didn't make the connection. It is really like them storming that fucking fort.
Yeah, I would have loved it if we had Berserk-esque outtakes here, where when he's yelling when the captain is yelling at the red troops, he just goes, "Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries."
Of course, you have to.
Yeah,
you have to.
Yeah. But yeah, the soldiers aren't, exactly the smartest, although they are being led by, Jabba Fay or Jabba the Hutt or whatever, who himself, I don't think he's just basically all head.
He's a walking Titan from Attack on Titan, basically.
Yeah, pretty much, just with the dignity of being clothed, which is the only dignity he actually has. But yeah, we also get intermission of Askeladd saying, put your backs into it, men, but we don't know what's going on because it's framed so that we only really see it up close to him. We have a hint that something is happening, but not really what. And this is the point where Thorfinn spots the captain with the, feathered helm on the top of the ramparts. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, there's my quest objective. Best go cash that in. So this is the point where he makes for the, front line, and Jamafay's soldiers are ordered to shoot him, but well, you've seen how effectual they've been in general up until this point, and they can't hit him for shit. To quote Dodgeball on the issue, you couldn't hit water if you fell out of a boat. But then again, that's not really saying much for the blue team either, who in turn will see Thorfinn come up in a minute, and they're like, do you want to shoot the kid? No? Whatever.
It is sort of, it's one of those moments that I bet feels better in the manga, because you're looking at panel to panel, and you can kind of sort of pace out the time in your head differently than the time it takes to show everything on screen. It's like, this is taking forever. Just shoot the fucking crossbow. But they don't. So, yeah.
Indeed. So, of course, Jabba Fay's like, you know, kill the kid, you're all shit, you're all useless. And then there's a noise coming from the forest behind him, and he's like...
The scene rules.
What? And he's just like, So, in what I think possibly counts as the only time in my memory that I've ever seen a boat go off-road, we see the Viking warboats that Askeladd has being carried over land by his men, with him riding on top, laughing his head off, and, of course, my headcanon has, you know, I'm on a boat, playing in it, you know, because how could it not?
Right.
So the idea being that they're carrying the boats across the land, you know, from the river that they came in on to the other side of the river, or the other river, the other tributary, where the fort is. And they make it over there. And Jabba Fay has the good sense, you know, not to actually say, go kill all of them. Oh, they're our friendlies. Thorfinn, by the way, decides that he's going to put his entry in, you know, the Olympic long jump here by deciding to make for the, you know, the rampart wall and catching onto it with his daggers, earning, I believe, a average 9.6 from the European, you know, scoring team there. Hooray! That's what I wish had happened anyway. I wish there'd just been people on the ramparts holding up numbers for that jump, because it was quite...
It was okay. It's only okay.
It was okay? Fucking hell.
A little pitchy. No. That scene... This is my favorite scene in the whole episode. This scene fucking ruled. It's one of those, like, moments in anime that I love. I love measuring the what the fuck quotient of a show. When you just stand up and go like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, because I just didn't expect it. In hindsight, I probably could have, because, like, there are some of those shots when you see them running, and you look behind their helmets, you can see the ship, but my brain just didn't process what it was or whatever. And when they emerge, and Askeladd is just laughing, just this fucking, like, shitty, like, laugh, you know, like, we're gonna fuck you up. Like, and the boats are just like, those Viking guys are flying across the plain, and just like, oh my god.
Can you imagine what it'd been like? Can you imagine what it'd been like if this was Monty Python-esque and they were just heading in the completely wrong direction? Like,
don't
wait, where are we going? Where are we going?
It.
Oh.
Yep, there
Doc's
I
Disco
go. Yep.
Doc's Disco is turning on there.
Yep. Motion sensitive light. The sensor is far away.
Illuminate?
I may go in just a moment here while you're talking and try to fix this. But
so anyway, Thorfinn does indeed manage to climb the wooden ramparts using his daggers, and he then begins to cut his way through all of these soldiers on top going for the captain. This is simultaneously while Askeladd and his men are circling around the back of the fort, and this is the point where the crossbowmen on the rampart actually starts firing at them, taking a couple of them out. But that then is, of course, interrupted by Thorfinn, like, you know, going full on, like, murder spree on all of them, cutting his way through them like a hot knife through butter. And he does eventually get the captain and decapitates his head off, you know, puts his head off. Which then falls in the water, and he's like, no!
No, the head!
No! I need that to turn into the quest giver, come on! I want to get my experience. So he goes in after him. At this point, Askeladd's men manage to make it to land, and, well, the battle's pretty much decided here. They start making their way through the village and the fort, killing and plundering as they go. The red team, the French soldiers, actually managed to make it through the front gate using the ram that they had previously been deterred from using, and it's all a rout. All the blue team are dead. You know, GG no re, great times. After all that, Jabba Face, you know, is surveying the carnage, and he's like, okay, we'll kill all the pirates now, because we're not giving them shit. Unfortunately, however, Jabba Fay, you know, he isn't as smart as his, you know, Star Wars contemporary, not even remotely, because he gets completely fleeced by Askeladd, who is many, many steps ahead of him, has completely plundered the entire town, the treasure vault, the churches. He's even stolen some kid's little piggy bank. You name it, it belongs to him now. And boy, oh boy, does he show off his spoils of war. Just casually sauntering along, you know, on his boat, like,
what's up, bitches?
I'm
Call your
Askeladd,
shit.
motherfucker. Yeah, it's incredible. It's ostentatiousness. Like it's just. What the fuck he said? When he even smiles, there's a little ding, like a little.
I know. That was great.
What
an asshole.
The only thing that could have made that better is if a Mentos, the fresh maker thing, came in at the bottom.
Yep, that would have been truly great.
So yeah, Askeladd has indeed pillaged the whole thing. Jabba Fett has been left with practically next to nothing, and Askeladd just sails off, like flipping him off basically verbally as he
They
goes.
even broke the boats so they couldn't chase.
Nope, they covered everything.
Yeah. How did they do it all so quickly? Vikings, they're fast.
Well, the thing is, Jabba Fett looks like he has the walking speed of a snail, so it probably took him that long to actually get there.
Fair.
And several breaks along the way as well. Like,
yeah, right.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Eye patch. Give me some water.
Not exactly got the best cardio.
No.
But anyway, Askeladd's like, celebrating. Everyone's like, "Hey, where's Thorfinn?" And he's like, "Oh, who gives a shit? He's probably dead." But this is the point where Thorfinn gets on the boat and
that's an important part that I will talk about later. This exchange. All right, continue.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, bear in mind what I told you before. First episode of the show's run chronologically, if you want to read it that way, first part of the manga. So if you were viewing this material in the manga the first time, this is our first introduction to Thorfinn and Askeladd's relationship. So as you've rightly pointed out, that's important. But what we will then learn is that Thorfinn says, "I, son of Thor, challenge you to a duel on my father's blade." And to Askeladd's credit, if you want to give him that, he responds in kind with the necessary formalities and says he'll do it. Just not right now because they're being shot at. Thorfinn is naturally indignant against that, but I suppose that, Askeladd does have a point. I'll begrudgingly give him that. That all well and good trying to duel, but if he just then gets popped in the head, by a crossbowman, then, well, it's all for naught, isn't it?
Yeah.
So then they decide to engage in what I think is a prototype of a Disney water ride as they go downstream.
It has to be. Yeah. It's the Splash Mountain. The first Splash Mountain. Vikings invented it, apparently. They should be given their due credit for pioneering this ride that we've all enjoyed.
Indeed. So they make out to sea. Thorfinn's very like, "Get you, Askeladd, you shit." And then that's the episode, pretty much. We then see them making out to sea with their plunder and pillage.
He makes Thorfinn makes the classic sound with his teeth that you often get in anime. The exaggerated, like, I can't do it, but yeah. There you go. There you go. That's good. Oh, well. Before we get to talking points, though, I didn't have a chance, / I forgot when we were starting to talk about the creative folks behind the episode, because we didn't do it on 4, 5, and 6 because it would have just taken probably too long to highlight everybody that we wanted to. But I did want
We're back to normal.
Yeah, hey, that's right. This is the run-of-the-mill episode, just a little out of order. Normani, episode 7, was, directed by Shingo Uchida. And Shingo Uchida is someone who has done a fair bit of episode directing in his day. I'm looking through the CV to see if anything catches my eye, because I didn't look through. Well, this individual was the director of The Egg of the King, the first of those more CG-rific Berserk movies about the Golden Age that weren't like really actively bad. They were not bad.
The intermediary step in the decline of Berserk as an anime form from the literal Golden Age of the 1997 to the more recent, stop motion 10 frames per second, made in Unity assets piece of shit that we got. Thanks for that.
That'd be the one. But he directed that movie and was the unit director of the third movie, The Advent. He also was an episode director for a single episode of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, episode 39. Can't remember which episode that is because it's been a minute. And it's done some other little things here and there. I really like the Don Machi franchise, and he was a unit director for one of those movies. I guess it was a compilation movie called The Arrow of Orion, and did some storyboarding for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the first season, the Phantom Blood and Battle
Phantom
Tendency.
Blood, yes.
But plus Battle
right.
Yeah, I think it was Battle Tendency he actually worked on, episode 18. Did the storyboarding and episode directing for episode 18 and episode 6. So some Phantom Blood too. So, been around the block. Nothing else like jumps out at me. Well, After the Rain, I think people like, but unfortunately, he's also done Ace Attorney, which I've heard was real bad. Not the whole thing, just a couple of episodes directing and storyboarding. So he's the director. Interesting fact, Shadon. This episode and the previous episode, episode 6. Oh no, episode 5 also. So the last 3 episodes have been written by 2 people. They're two credited head writers. So before episodes 1 through 4, it was our buddy Hiroshi Seko.
Mm-hmm.
Hiroshi Seko is still one of the head writers, but apparently is teaming with Kento Ihara to do the writing here. And Kento Ihara has written some stuff. It's not a lot. Kento CV is pretty small. But there is good stuff on here. The screenplay... the credit is screenplay cooperation. If you have any idea what that means, please tweet
I do.
Because I don't.
I do.
Oh.
So you've got, so here's the thing, right? You literally have one guy, like, you've got a keyboard, single keyboard, 2 guys. One guy leans over one guy's shoulder to do the right hand, the other guy leans over the guy's shoulder to do the left hand, and they just kind of go like that.
Okay, perfect. So,
It's the most extreme method of script writing possible, but by God, does it work.
And that's what he's done. That's what Kento Ihara has done. I called him Kento a moment ago, pardon me. For Death...
Are you shipping them?
Yep. That's it. That's what's happening. So, screenplay cooperation for Death Parade. Storyboard supervisor for FLCL Furikuri Alternative, which I have not seen, the new thing. But the thing that really jumps out at me, apart from Vinland and a little bit of Terror and Resonance credit, is this person was the head writer and wrote all the scripts for Saga of Tanya the Evil.
Ooh.
And I really like that show. There's people that don't like that show, and I think people that are a little bit reductive about it. To be fair, a lot of times with anime, you can judge a book by its cover, but this is the 1 out of 100 times that it's actually more than what it says on the tin.
Wow, really? I thought that was Rugrats meets Mein Kampf, but I guess I'm wrong.
No. There's a lot more to it, actually. I really enjoyed that, and I haven't seen the movie, but he also wrote the script for the movie. So, and he's written with Seko the last 3 episodes of Vinland Saga. So Kento Ihara got chops. Yeah,
good for him.
Yeah.
Just to answer a question in chat from Amy Chibi. I personally have not read the manga yet. It's going to be something that'll happen at some point in the future, but I don't even know if it'll necessarily happen before we finished the entirety of Vinland Saga's run. Time is not my ally, I'm afraid. Although that being said, we do have Blinkaji in chat who is incredibly familiar with the manga, who can offer his thoughts and indeed corrects us if we happen to say things that are not true.
Yep.
Or, which, knowing my tendency to chow my ass is probably most of the time, but hey, there we go. All right. So let's get to talking points, and I might as well start with the big one. Let's start with the big one that I mentioned before, and this is why I was very insistent on mentioning the certain language that was used and the way that this episode flows and is set up. I am in 2 minds of this episode, because on the one hand, I think it actually might be actively bad for Vinland Saga. On the other, I think it might actually be good, and I'm not quite sure. Maybe it could be both. I mean, shows can be problematic while still being good. Here's the thing, right? Let's think about the events of this episode, and indeed how I've just described them to everyone. I've probably done, I'd say, a reasonably good job of making it sound like Askeladd is the most awesome big swinging dick in all of Viking lore. Is that not true?
Yeah.
Yeah, but think of it, right? What have we seen happening before this episode? We've seen Askeladd doing a load of awful shit, not least of which is actually killing Thorfinn's father, pillaging, plundering, raping, something that I neglected and indeed fucks up on mentioning by saying previously, oh, he's not a rapist. I'm like, whoops, nice one. Why don't I just next time say the water isn't wet?
Yeah, I mean, we goofed. It happens,
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a despicable shithead.
Yeah, but that might play into that a little bit. But, I mean, think of the, Jabba thing, yeah? He's clearly designed and presented as someone where it's just like, he's going to get one over on him. It's going to be great. Look at this toady little fuck.
Yeah.
So, as presented in this episode, Askeladd is made out to be pretty awesome. But that's contrary to what we've seen previously, which is that he's been a complete shit biscuit. So it doesn't quite gel together, and that's because, if you think about it, moving this episode or this particular plot point or plot thread to the beginning of the story makes more sense, because we see Askeladd then presented, if you divorce yourself from your memory of it, as awesome, and then we are left with the question of, okay, what's his relationship with Thorfinn? Why does Thorfinn want to duel him? What's happened between them previously? And then if you had that opening image of Askeladd, being the big gold bling wearing dickhead that he is, you think to yourself, oh god, he's actually done some pretty heinous shit. And so your image of him declines over time. Whereas what we have now is our image of him increasing. But it just... But it seems to me that might be contrary to the point of Vinland Saga, that it doesn't quite gel with how he's been presented previously. And I'm not saying that, of course, that always has to happen. But the point is, we know him to be an awful shithead, so why are we now being told, or rather, why is the anime framing him in a way that's making us want to try and get behind him? And obviously, given the adaptational choice there, it makes more sense if you think of it from an authorial intent that it went first and had him start high and then be brought down low in the opinion of the audience, as opposed to being the other way. However, I did say that I was in two minds of this, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, Thorfinn at this point has now been working with Askeladd for several years, doing all of his dirty shit, even saved his life at least once. We know that categorically to be true. And I wonder if this also is just, a way of the show and the author and the writers adapting the material to try and lure us as the audience into the same false sense of security that Thorfinn has, that kind of familiarity with him.
Yeah.
With Askeladd, that is. Mm-hmm. That we're now comfortable. We're now like, hey, check out Askeladd. He's getting one over on this little prick. It's great, isn't it? Oh, yeah, by the way, he killed Thorfinn's father and has, been helping people rape and pillage half of England. But look at that crown he's wearing. Isn't that fantastic? Looks real good. That'll sell well on Antiques Roadshow. But yeah, that's why I'm in two minds of it, because it can work if you interpret it in that way. But it's clear, from the way this little plot thread of the fort siege has been constructed, that it also very definitely was intended as an opening, intro.
Yeah, so I guess how I feel about it is, I understand what you mean by the fact that that really linear arc of kind of how we feel about him. That makes sense, and I understand why the author did it that way. I think thematically, though, sequencing the episodes this way can work in terms of how do I put this? So, yeah, we see Askeladd is a total piece of shit, which, as Amy Chibi points out, is not a unique thing for people of the time. Most of the warriors probably were super shitty. Although he does display a level of guile and trickery that allow him to be even more shitty than probably your average killer.
I mean, if you recall what I said in the talking point I made in episode 1 about the idea of historical authenticity, you in theory could drop Askeladd saying, go and take all the women, without major consequence, because he's still a shithead on a personal level to Thorfinn and still does shitty things.
But
then you wouldn't have that overhanging element there.
I think the fact that you come to see someone even shittier than Askeladd and find yourself somehow rooting for that smug piece of garbage to get one over on him can be seen as like
everyone loves an anti-hero.
Almost, well, no, I don't even want to say that, but like it can be, because I think Thorfinn occupies that space, but I just think like a war, like the battlefield, like everyone is shitty, no matter who we're rooting for, and even Thorfinn has done some awful things here at this point, and we're still rooting for him because we've seen him as a kid. And I think that even we were shown some little glimpses in the last couple episodes of Askeladd as a more nuanced character than he might at first appear. He's not just like a coward, he's not just a schemer, and we'll talk about, I think, later, like how he thinks of Thorfinn. But so I think if you can track how you're feeling about him even still, like in a almost a linear fashion, because I do think, not in terms of going from hate to love or anything like that, but just like maybe you start rooting for a shitty character you know is shitty because you want to see more of him, because the show slowly kind of peels back the onion a little bit, and you've been treated.
But did Griffith do nothing wrong?
Oh, no, he did everything wrong.
You were leading on to that. I'm sorry, but you bait my trap card. Then it had to happen.
Well, I don't think. Well, you don't have to root.
I'm
for
joking.
Griffith
I'm joking.
But I do want to see more of Griffith, and I want to see him get his fucking comeuppance. Just like I want to see more of Askeladd, but I want to see him get his fucking comeuppance. You know.
It feels like and this is not me criticizing you, but I feel like it feels like a weird dichotomy then, where you want to see more of him, but you still want to see him get shit on. It's weird. Like there seems like a kind of almost contradiction.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think of like villains, good villains in stories, right? I mean, you like them being there. You want them there. You want them to have their screen time. You want them to get the adequate kind of development so you can put investment in there. And you know, it's just not the same if you know, if your hero is vanquishing like a cartoon character. And I actually think this is going to be more interesting when and if Thorfinn does get to kill him, because it's not just him getting his revenge and we all get to celebrate. It's like a murder of a guy who's a real human who had, you know, these who was shitty a lot of the time, but also like had some complexities and feelings about things. It makes it feel more, it gives it more weight again than just him like doing it and that being the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, in Thorfinn as well, like, you know, there's that classic phrase, "The hunter is nothing without the hunt." So what happens to him after he does kill Askeladd?
Do you agree with Felix that this is a distraction from how bad he is? Because I personally don't feel that way. I think that you can, again, I think the earlier episodes in the show did a good job of saying, or of hinting at the subtleties of the character, the depth. So I think, I want to say, for me, the show is doing a good job of marrying all these things together, of forming a more complete picture of a guy who is like has done some bad things, killed people, just some heinous things to innocent people, to women. But it's a guy who, like, his men love him. He wins. He takes care of them, and he like has a really weird relationship at this point with Thorfinn, I think. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily trying to distract you. I do think it's easy to, like, I understand what I'm saying, you feel in that way. I don't think you're off base necessarily, like, because, like Shadon was saying, the story wasn't originally laid out this way.
Yeah, and to answer Felix's point there and what you asked me then, like, I think you can read it as being distracting, but I think that it's important to understand, if you do read it that way, I think that it's a consequence of the resequencing of the story from the manga. rather than necessarily deliberate intent to make that happen. Which you could argue is a bad thing still, because it means that the writers may have not put enough thought into it. I think this is very much going to be a your mileage is going to vary thing, and I'm even then not sure how to feel ultimately about it. But yeah, I do think that you have to be careful. I think it's just a case of, showing you have to be careful when doing adaptations and resequencing events and moving things around. Because even without materially changing what happens, simply shifting things around temporally can have significant impacts on how the audience perceives it and what we interpret from it. So, if nothing else, this is a good object lesson just to be careful,
Yeah. Agreed. Okay. Can we now talk about that line that you specifically talked about at the very end of the show when Bjorn says, "Oi, Thorfinn's not back yet," and then Askeladd is like, "Oh, he's probably dead. That fucker."
What the fuck was that?
It was my Askeladd. It's pretty okay, I think.
Why are you starting to sound more and more like a Looney Tunes character?
I don't know. I forgot. Oh yeah, I need to. I didn't do the check-in with the Viking accent. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can do it though, because it's not the beginning.
Take 7. Whatever's good for you, Doc.
Are you sure? I mean, we can wait till next week to keep it at the beginning of the episodes.
You've got to give it a try, man.
All right.
We can't go an episode without actually having you try the Viking accent.
All right.
So if you keep score at home, folks, this will now be the 5th attempt, given we've had 4 episodes prior to this one of this show. Please post in the comments of the YouTube and Twitch and wherever if you think that Doc nails it this time. I mean, we've had every language and every accent so far, apart from Viking. But I'm feeling confident today.
All right.
Take it away, Maestro. Take it away.
Here we go. Is this a Viking? I am sailing on the ships on the high seas. This. Yes. It is Askeladd, and this is probably a pretty problematic accent, I think. But this is, how they talked according to my research. Mead and horns and killing. They are the things I like to do as a Viking. Okay, I have to stop. Look at your face. You just allowed me to keep doing it. I wanted you to shut it down immediately. Oh, so bad. So terrible. This is the entirely stereotypical accent, which is a stereotype, which is not a real accent.
All right,
of anyone.
Let's move on to our next talking point, folks.
Okay, all right, okay. Just people saying no in the chat. Oh, okay, all right. Okay. That was dumb. We're dumb. Welcome to Warui Deshou. All right. So, the line that you talked about toward the end of the episode, right? Just, your face is... I'm sorry.
I'm waiting, Doc.
I can't look at you. I have to look away from you and do the talking. So there's a line that you talked about at the end of the episode when Askeladd says whenever I hit my mic, they're saying Thorfinn's not back, and then Askeladd says, well, he's probably dead. So let's just leave without him. And the fact that tie that to the beginning in the battle when Askeladd's making a big performance and saying, oh, I'm so scared of you, like I'll give you 3 gold coins if you succeed. And
Knowing Askeladd, they were probably chocolate coins as well.
Right. So
Just to dick him over.
I'll tell you what I think is happening, especially because I think he's trying too hard. I think that part, especially when he says, "Oh, who cares? He's probably dead. We don't need a kid anyway holding us up." I mean, I think it's pretty obvious to everyone that he plays a really critical role in their operations if you consider this a pretty kind of stock standard mission, attack plan or whatever that they have. I think,
you're right.
I think he's like performing in public so that to downplay, I think, to the rest of his men how vital Thorfinn is to Askeladd in planning these missions. I don't think he wants that dependence to be a public thing.
Well, Askeladd has certainly been fond of public performance before, not least of which with Floki. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Where he's just there, like, legs propped up on the desk, like, I'm Askeladd, bitch, please. And also with with Jabba Fey or Jabba the Hutt.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't understand French. Je ne comprends pas. Je ne comprends pas.
That was great.
Oui, mon ami. Oui. So yeah, he's certainly a fan of public performance. He likes trying to show people. Indeed, he did that with Thor, as it happens as well. Like, oh, I was just kidding. I'm not having you leaders. Oh, I had you for a second, didn't I? I had you. I think it was legitimate. Oh, you silly sod, you. So I can certainly believe that he is a fan of public performance. I
mean, just not just in the expected ways does Thorfinn help them, not just with the original negotiation sort of Trojan horse deal, but also, I mean, Askeladd would never have been able to cross the water without Thorfinn occupying the crossbowmen as Big Bang's Hurt. I can never remember. I wanted to say Big and Hurt, but that's not what it is. As Big Bang's Hurt points out. And isn't that funny when Thorfinn is trying to do this thing so he can kill Askeladd? He's like, unbeknownst to him, he's helping him in this extremely crucial way because if not for him trying to cut that guy's head off in order to kill and duel Askeladd would have been killed by the crossbowmen.
Yeah.
Irony of ironies.
Indeed. I mean, my knowledge of history around the time of the Vikings here is sketchy. Like the most I really remember is from what I learned when I was in school. Which is just broad stuff about, Norman the Conqueror and the Bayeux Tapestry and things like that. And I might even got the Bayeux Tapestry wrong in this place in history. I could be thinking of something much later on. Just take everything I'm saying with a massive grain of salt here. But from what I do remember of warfare, generally speaking, like, the kind of role that Thorfinn plays as a scout and also as an assassin, I don't think it was a common thing back then. Certainly not amongst, like, the Danes or the Vikings. Again, this is just me being speculative more than anything because I don't have hard knowledge to back this up. So if people do know more than I do about if people like Thorfinn or, who serve that kind of role in a military, even in a group, were commonplace or more common than I might think, then I'm certainly interested to hear. Please do chime in on that. But yeah, I would agree that he has certainly been very useful to Askeladd at this point. Probably despite Askeladd's own, initial belief or, theory or thinking on that because, go scout, get eaten by wolves. Then Thorfinn lives and, they have the advantage all of a sudden. So I think that you're right. It brings to mind, funnily enough, like, because Askeladd does... Oh.
I thought I had fixed this.
Illuminate.
Oh, work. Oh no, I've just ruined it, is what I've done. Continue, please.
We apologise for the guest appearance of Slenderman on this particular episode of Warui Deshou. We will certainly put him back in his box. But anyway, like, the thing that this actually reminds me of all things, and this is me getting into being a sci-fi nerd of all things, is Frank Herbert's Dune novels, specifically the very first one. I won't bore you all to death with going into a massive plot recitation of the first June book. But I will mention what happens at a certain point, which is that Paul Atreides, the protagonist of the book, he becomes part of a tribe of warriors named the Fremen, who specialize in knife fighting. Like, they're ridiculously good at it. And he's taken under the wing of the tribe's leader named Stilgar. And at some point, the tribe have this societal or social understanding that because Paul is arguably a better fighter than Stilgar is, and Stilgar is a better fighter than everyone else, he will take over. He'll kill Stilgar in one-on-one combat and take over as ruler, which Paul says is fucking stupid because, well, we're down one good fighter, then why cannot, what, do you think we're the fucking Sith? Come on, bro. But why am I bringing this up in relation to this? I think that perhaps maybe Askeladd is doing this duel now, not necessarily because he feels any obligation to Thorfinn to do so, but more perhaps to retain his own rank and position. Because people are impressed with what Thorfinn's done. Like, yeah, you did good, kid, you're pretty tough. And, they see that he's actually pulled these feats off. Mm-hmm. Like, if you think about it, what did Askeladd really do in that battle? Rode on a boat and just went, go kill everyone.
Really did. And at one point he was like doing his little sing-song voice when they were in the fort, like, oh no, go and kill him.
Was he turning into a Disney villain, I wonder?
It was very sing-song in the delivery. And then the French came in and were like, holy shit, look what they did. But yeah,
can we expect
Askeladd didn't do anything.
Can we expect an Askeladd cover of Be Prepared?
I hope so. Can we get that?
I reckon that'd be good. I mean, we got linked from Feowulf, which I'll mention in a minute, a potential album cover for Askeladd's rap, and maybe that could be his first cover. But anyway, I wonder if that might be why Askeladd is ultimately agreeing to the duel, because if Thorfinn keeps succeeding as he does and he keeps delaying the issue, people will think that he is genuinely a coward because Thorfinn is genuinely that good a fighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We will undoubtedly find out, but there's certainly potential for that there.
There is. He keeps conveniently putting him off for different reasons. Because he wants to just keep him in the fucking army.
Sounds like a bad boyfriend to me.
Yes. He does not want to... He doesn't want to lose this kid. He's too important.
Or
he's scared of him. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or he's scared of him. Either way. Okay. I think you're up now. As you
I am indeed.
Refill your stein there.
Yeah, it is actually a Viking beer stein that I won from a loot crate at Comic-Con. It reads as thus: "This is to my Viking's breath, and this is my Viking's death." Great motto. It's actually probably from the Vikings TV show, but I'm filling it with Diet Coke, so it's probably not the best use of it. Do not worry, I will be drinking mead on stream at some point before we actually finish Vinland Saga. That is a cast iron promise from me fine folks listening today. All right, so my next talking point. Let's actually talk about Thorfinn's insistence on a duel here.
Okay.
Now, if I had to, if you were to speculate, Doc, you don't even have to give me a number here. Put it in like the tens, maybe, or like the ones or whatever. How many opportunities could you imagine that Thorfinn has had to just fucking backstab Askeladd at any given point over the time that they've... Never mind that we saw the actual one on screen where he could have killed him, but he didn't because he was a kid and was petrified of that. But think of all the time that's happened since then, since he's become much more hardened as a warrior. You totally can believe he could have fucking backstabbed him at any point.
Yep.
So why is he so insistent on a duel then? If he wants revenge for his father, why does it need to be done via duel? Why not just simply shank him when he's on the toilet or something?
Because it's the way he went out, right? He lost the duel.
So if you think of it this way, right? One of the things that we've seen happen to Thorfinn is the loss of his humanity. Like as I said, like he's become diseased with warfare. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For someone who was warned away from it by his father before his father's untimely death, he is reveling it. He is carving and cutting his way through fucking England, France. He's murdering the shit out of everyone. But he hangs on to that kind of civilized sense of combat, that civilized understanding between two people of the duel, to honor his father. And I think that might be the anchor that's presented to us as the audience, that Thorfinn hasn't completely gone truly feral or wild or cruel or evil or whatever word you want to use for it. Because Vinland Saga thus far, like, I think it's had a kind of like, fairly nuanced understanding of, is violence acceptable? Is violence necessary? Feel free to keep typing, Amy, by the way, while I read out this particular point here, and then we'll come and address that in just a moment. But yeah, is violence like ever justified or appropriate? If you want my perspective on it, I take a kind of grey morality stance, which is that, of course, I don't believe that you should be going around kicking the shit out of people for no reason. But I think that there is certainly the time for vigilance and the time to fight back against aggression. But then, of course, it gets more nuanced than that in that, what do you define as aggression? If someone just insults you, does that then give you the right to break every bone in their body? Does that give you the right to punch them? It's a very complicated thing.
When it comes to me, yes. No. I've been exactly one fight in my life. Although I did win that fight. It was many, many years ago on the football field.
Oh, I thought you were referring to the battle you were having with the lice in your office.
No, I'm going to lose that fight.
But yeah, like, for me, like, violence is sometimes necessary as a defense, and it can be justified in therefore. It's not something I would ever ever say that should be used offensively. But even then, it's muddy the water. Like, you can in theory invade a country out of, a desire for defense. Mm-hmm. But I think that simply saying outright all violence is bad, period, I think that that's a very idealistic way of looking at things, and I, appreciate it. But the pragmatic truth of it is that it's not the case. Sometimes there are evil men out there in the world, and as the old saying goes, when evil triumphs when good men do nothing, and sometimes good men must commit violence in order to do that. But obviously, what Askeladd and indeed Thorfinn are doing is they're committing violence just for the fucking jollies of it, like they're off out, going on a pub crawl. Yep. They're not committing it for any other reason than to pillage and plunder and, have their merry way with the townsfolk and all that awful shit. Thors, by contrast, when he fought against Askeladd, he took severe restraint in, fighting back against him, outright not even killing him. But there could be arguments made, as I've suggested when we analysed the previous episodes, that maybe he should have killed Askeladd. Maybe he should have had, took his head off, and that might have caused his men to scatter and allowed them to escape. And so I wonder if, Thorfinn hanging on to the idea of a duel is his, last shred of not becoming back to the boy he was originally. That's long since gone. That's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of like him imagine holding on to, the edge of a building or a cliff.
Right.
It's the thing that he grips on so tightly that if he achieves it, he'll pull himself back up. And he'll not be the same person, of course, but he'll have retained a sense of dignity, a sense of, that honour, that civilized manner in conducting himself, rather than just being, as no different than Askeladd was. And indeed, we can certainly wonder about Askeladd's own willingness to adhere to the duel when, as much as I say that, Thorfinn could have murdered the shit out of him whenever he wanted, what still stops Askeladd from doing that? Bjorn could just held him down. He could have just turned him to pop-up pirate.
Yeah.
And a 1 dagger, and a 2 dagger, and a 3 dagger, and oh boy, there comes the jam. So yeah.
Yeah. This is what I'm saying about, don't dismiss Askeladd as, a paper villain. A villain for sure, but, he's not, evil incarnate. Or maybe he's just not, sort of evil in the kind of chaotic bestial way that Thorfinn, like you're saying, wants to avoid also becoming by sticking to kind of this code of duel, and also wanting poetic justice for his father by beating a person honorably in a duel who the only reason he beat his dad was through dishonorable means in that duel.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Just to address Amy's point, we'll cover that now.
Yeah.
So for those who are not currently, who might be listening to this on SoundCloud later, just so you are clear on what's been asked here, to quote, "What are your thoughts on Askeladd's armor? He wears a breastplate which no Viking wears, and in that era is not common at all to wear." Speaking for myself here, I'm not so worried about it right now. It could be relevant later in the manga, perhaps a family heirloom or something like that. As is right now, it's just a point of aesthetics. And as I've said before in the first episode we covered, historical authenticity is not strictly speaking necessary to tell a good story. If that's there and it's not authentic to the Viking experience, it's not addressed later, then that can be a quibble point. I don't blame you for thinking, well, why is that there? Did they really care about it when they got all the other stuff right? But for me, I honestly haven't thought much about it. I hope there's something to it. Because, we do have the mirror, we'll then actually mirror quite nicely with Thorfinn's own experience of still retaining his father's dagger. So by the way... Oh, sorry, go on.
No, you go ahead and finish, and then I'll say mine.
Just to mention very quickly about the dagger, by the way, Thorfinn mentions when he's at the negotiating table with Jabba, I want my father's memento. It's a memento of my father. But again, bear in mind what I said to you before about the way this is presented in the manga. This is the first time we all have heard of it being from his father. And that's a lead-in then. That gives you interested in, where's his father? Is his father, dare I say, Askeladd? You've got a fucking clue at this point. What's going on?
I mean...
So it's another hook to keep you interested. But it's kind of redundant at this particular point because we know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that it's there, but it's hard to deny, like you said, the narrative power of those kind of things being before what we've already seen in their original order. So my take on Amy's question about Askeladd's breastplate is just that. So it's not common for Vikings to have it, but these folks are mercenaries, so they're not necessarily part of the national army. So they do things like just go to French forts and kill people, and take the storehouse and take things.
Could it belong to someone else?
He probably took it from another, but I think that he wears it and no one else wears it because he's a coward. Because it's for self-preservation. You know what I mean? It's so that the thing that happened to one of the guys on his boat, who just got shot through the chest with a crossbow, won't happen to him. He's... But
then again, he just casually deflected the arrow with his sword,
He did. But, and it broke through that one guy's wooden shield. But I think this is him saying, I'm necessary. Of course, I value my life. I don't want to die. But look, the men will let me wear this because I'm necessary to this outfit.
I'm a big swinging dick.
Yeah, and I'm the brains of the operation. Without me, this mercenary band is nothing. And so I think
what, you're going to put Bjorn in charge? You're going to put Bjorn in charge? He'll have you searching for mushrooms for weeks.
Exactly.
Oh, look at that moray! Look at that. We're going to the moray pillaging spree, lads. Woohoo!
Oh, great! Back to the swamp. Yeah. So I totally think that this is to play up that aspect of his character, the sort of cowardly bits of it. But since we haven't read the manga, maybe there's more to it. We'll see.
Ooh, stay tuned, loyal viewers. Do you have another talking point, Doc?
Yeah, I do.
Punch it, Chewie.
Can we, speaking of Chewie, can we talk about Jabante?
Oh,
can we just talk about Jabante being disgusting? One of the grossest anime characters that I've seen in a minute. I mean, sure, I call them walking Titan, and the Titans are funny looking, but they didn't have snot dribbling down their face. They didn't breathe yawn breath into the camera. You didn't see his nasty ass morning breath floating in the marks on his face, and he's just always eating, and it's just disgusting. He's a disgusting person, a gross character, and I guess the embodiment of the decadent nobility being detached from the rest of the soldiers and being above it all.
He's sat in a chair fanning himself like he's watching a movie.
Yeah.
It should have been one of, it's literally the Viking equivalent of one of those chairs you take to camping that has the little drink holder in it. The one that folds out.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. And the reason I say that he is portrayed as being so corpulent and disgusting and wretched is because when you frame it again as being the very first part of the story's run, well, we need someone who's very clearly identifiable as the shithead. visually speaking. And he certainly serves that purpose. Like, I don't think we're going to see him again. I mean,
oh no, oh he's done.
I mean, what was the name? What was the name of the gentleman who was the slave owner at the start, whose name I forget?
Oh, god damn it! It was a good name. It was a really good name. Oh, what was it?
Bob?
Started with an H, right?
Halfdan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not the whole Dan, only half the Dan.
Yeah, I think we're much more likely to see Halfdan make a return than that fucking, toady little piece of shit. But yeah, you're right. Like, that's the reason he is the way he is, because he's a disposable insert character to, get the audiences, by, making him so loathsome, to make us get behind Askeladd, as I mentioned before, like in the way that this works, if you assume it to be the first part of the story.
Cheer these Vikings. They are killing people, but at least they're not disgusting. Like, that fucking toad.
At least they're not a giant goiter.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to talk about how he's vile and loathsome.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I have one more talking point to make before we go to questions from patrons. This is more of a kind of technical one here, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. So, when Thorfinn gets to the Red French people's camp, no one can understand him because he speaks Norse. And they eventually do find someone who can do that, and he acts as translator. But here's the problem, quote unquote, I have with this, in that they're all speaking Japanese. Now you might say to yourself, well, fucking duh, it's a Japanese anime, that's the language it's in. But I can't help but feel the meaning of this, like, whole, Thorfinn can't speak the same language, is a bit diminished when they're all speaking the same language, but you still, like, narratively to us, Japanese, that is, with subtitles. And it does make me wonder, would Vinland Saga be better off overall as a show if it did indeed have the authentic languages of its various peoples? You've got, your Nordic, your Danish, your French, your English. Because, I mean, I understand why it's there, like, because obviously Thorfinn can't speak French. And indeed, that's Askeladd's joke later on. That's fine. I get that totally. But it doesn't quite really work when it translates to an anime, because then they're all speaking the exact same language.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that the subtitles did a decent job in that area. And I also liked the fact that when Thorfinn was talking, I only picked up on this the second time. You could hear the interpreter talking in a whisper behind him. It wasn't meant to drown out. They mixed it in such a way that it didn't go over the top and distract from what Thorfinn was saying. But if you listened, you could hear it. So, I don't know. I find myself unbothered by that sort of thing. What do you...
Yeah, I think maybe it would be more of an issue if language was a significant factor in the show's themes and ideas, whereas thus far it really hasn't been. But it just seemed a bit odd to me that like it didn't quite have the desired effect, but thankfully it was only just very functional in terms of its inclusion, rather than Thorfinn thinking to himself, like, I'm an alien in an alien land. So, I don't know. I mean, it does also kind of diminish the point later on where Thorfinn says, like, I'm going to kill the fuck out of you, Jabberfay, or whatever he says. And Jabberfay says, you said something mean, didn't you? And I'm like, you're speaking the same fucking language!
He said, just attack, fat ass. You'll see later.
I mean, what? Have you got too much, like, processed cheese between your ears, you fucking lump of lad?
I can suspend my disbelief there.
I know. I'm being pedantic. I'm being nitpicky here. But it just does make me wonder that, like, when you have material like this that is very explicitly set in different countries that we know and historically know, as much as I say that historical authenticity is secondary to telling a good story here, one does wonder what might have been different if, they did have the actual languages. Because bear in mind, we are still reading subtitles. So functionally, it would make no difference for us, the audience.
I just don't, like, I've never been, I guess, one to be on that corner. I understand the idea. But there are people that are like, oh, man, the Bacano anime or the Cowboy Bebop, or not, Bebop's a bad example, but the Bacano anime is a good one because it's set all completely in America. Like, there should be no Japanese voice acting. There should only be, American. And you should listen to the English dub in this one because it's set in America and that's the authentic way. And I'm just like, I just like the Japanese language, Japanese voice acting.
I mean, in those instances, like the language is irrelevant because it's just the method of communication to the audience. For me,
this is different. You're right.
Yeah, when it's characters communicating amongst each other.
Yeah.
Well, as I say, in the scope of Vinland Saga, it's not really a big deal, if I'm quite honest, because language is not, at least at the moment, a big idea or theme of the show. If it was such a big thing, like, where Thorfinn was just like, I feel like I'm a fucking alien or something like that, like if he was having a lot of self-examination about it, then it would be a problem.
Right. Sure.
But I can also understand just purely from a practical sense that if you were to hire, let's say a Swedish or Nordic voice actor to play that and then have your French, like you've got to hire many different people to do that. That's probably expensive. You have to fly them in maybe to do studio work if you're doing it that way. So I can understand why you would do it from a business sense as well, just for the sake of not spending too much money. But anyway, just call it an observation. Let's not call it an actual black mark against the episode. Just a quirk, I suppose, of the way these things.
All right, makes sense. Even if you didn't bring in the, do the Danish, like if you just wanted to do the French and the Japanese just as a counterpoint to something different, you know what I mean, than for the authentic effect. I mean, I could see it. I see how that could add to the scene for sure.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can still understand what Fetch a Lavash means, but, there's a time and a place for
Fetch a Lavash.
Oh, dear. All right. Do you have any more talking points, Doc, or should we move on to questions from the patrons?
No, I don't. I'm ready for the patron questions. Although
all right.
I can't pull them up on my screen because if I do,
I have them here.
We will go away.
I have them here. Do not worry. So, this first question comes from Trickster721, one of our patrons. Thank you for dropping this in the chat, Trickster. This is actually a two-part because I did ask for some clarification. So, just for the sake that our wonderful audience here can get the full context of what's been asked, I'll release it all. So, first thing is Vinland Saga a turning point for the censorship of violence in anime? Is Thorfinn committing knife crimes, or do medieval gaijin count as fantasy creatures? Now, I asked because when it comes to censorship, you need a time reference for this. You need to know what you're comparing it to. Because the 90s anime in particular, ultra-violence was the tone of the day for a lot of that. Not all of it, but a lot of it. So I asked Trickster to expand it, and he said, or they said rather, this show is deliberately stretching the boundaries of good taste. Especially for a very big mainstream show that's airing on NHK.
That's
when somebody...
Nope, go ahead. Sorry, my fault.
When somebody was shot through the head in Saranzamai, for example, it results in a thin wisp of smoke coming out of their hair. Wounds are conveniently hidden from view by clothing or pieces of scenery, and when limbs are severed, anime characters are revealed to be made of some kind of strange coloured gelatin. I wonder what it tastes like. Do you reckon orange or lime? Anyway, this show is stretching those gore-limiting conventions to the absolute limit, turning them into parody. Also, in Attack on Titan, they were able to push the boundaries and get a lot of mileage out of unrealistic fantasy violence. But this is just a kid stabbing people with a knife in the real world. To be clear, I'm not debating the merits. I just felt like the creators were making quite the bold statement right from the opening sequence of the show. Trickster then offers the time point of 2006, but I'm actually going to override that and expand backwards to the 90s, to that ultra-violent era I was referring to earlier. I think that's quite...
Yeah, well, can I just remark on... So I think a lot of the things that people will think of when they think of that era of anime were not aired on television. I think the key point is that this is a television show airing on Japanese PBS, NHK, right? And so, like, if you're thinking about, like, Ninja Scroll, Ghost in the Shell, Urotsuki Doji, Akira... all those sorts of things are like movies or OAVs. OAVs were a much bigger deal back then, the kind of straight-to-video market. In that way, you could have all kinds of rubbish, like Chimera and everything, like totally uncensored, because you don't have to worry about the television folks causing a fuss. Whereas, this is airing in... I don't know what the time slot is. I mean, I know it's Noitamina, but I don't know like what time this comes on. If it's considered family viewing hour or whatever.
You know what? You say that. I have to point this out. Practically every time I've watched this on Amazon Prime, because I'm watching it legitimately, because I like to try and put at least some money through my viewing back in the creators' pockets, even though a lot of it's going to go to Jeff Bezos. By the way, Jeff, when you ending world hunger, just saying, get on that. Please.
Get on it.
You fuck. Anyway, whenever I look at this on Amazon Prime, I keep getting adverts for the Amazon Prime Kids section, which includes such wonderful things as Peppa Pig. Oh. And I mentioned this before when I've said about Banana Fish and how I hope people don't accidentally type that, click on that when they're searching for bananas in pajamas or some shit. And apparently now Vinland Saga could very well end up being clicked on by some poor kid who just wanted to watch some Saturday morning TV. They wanted some, Dora the Explorer. And they got an exploration show, all right. And they're like, oh my god, I didn't realize the Vikings were so into strawberry jam. That's the excuse you'd have to use to get away with that.
Parents.
It's a nice one, Amazon.
Put parental controls on your streaming services.
Yeah. I mean, between Amazon and Netflix, Netflix is definitely leading in the race to the bottom on terms of how it handles its anime content. Because I think Netflix at this point is actively trying to stop people from watching it short of actually taking it off the air entirely. Or they have no understanding of what the word means, but that's debate for a different
He-Man anime. It's my favorite headline to come out in a while.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let me just answer Trixter's question directly from my own perspective here. Now, I think that from my understanding of 90s violent anime, that's the point that I'm going to use as the for the peak of anime violence. Part of me feels, and this is just my perspective, it's not necessarily true, but I get the impression that a lot of the violence that was present in those shows might have been influenced somewhat by Western media at the time, and Western films being particularly violent. I mean, look at the stuff in the late 80s, like, say, Predator, for example. Quite popular action films. So I can see where that comes from, and I can see that, maybe in time attitudes have shifted and changed to where that's no longer necessary. Now, I'm not against ultra-violence in general. Although there are times when I think it does cross the boundaries of good taste and, such and such. I mean, if you want to take, for example, say, Quentin Tarantino's, what was it called again? Django Unchained, which is one of his personal favorite movies of mine after, Pulp Fiction. In Django Unchained, there's that shootout scene at the end where there's just blood gushing everywhere. The entire plantation house, the hallway inside of it, is completely and utterly caked in the stuff. It's like the Kool-Aid man crashed a truck of his own product through the front door and then face planted as he fell out. Or rather, when he put it through the windshield. It's just everywhere. The violence is extreme. But there's a point to it. Because the violence that is happening there is against the white slave owners. And it's kind of like an almost vicarious revenge thrill, seeing, these awful, reprehensible people just be dismembered and disemboweled by the gunfire that's happening. Whereas contrast that in the film with the violence against the black people, the very, authentic colonial slavery-based violence of, the whips and, the manacles and all that. That's not presented as ultra-violence at all. It's just presented as incredibly cruel and inhumane as it was. Mm-hmm. So there's a distinct contrast. There's an intent, an authorial intent behind that violence. So for me, I don't mind ultra-violence in any medium, be it anime, live action, television, whatever, if it's executed with an intent. If you're putting it in there just because, hey, it's Rambo killing time, I love my blood so good, oh boy, I'm going to have this man's intestines fly out of his face, maybe take a step back and think about why you're doing it. Mindless violence is the issue here. So
sometimes there's that's okay. Thinking about a lot of the things I referenced, and also thinking about Kite, I think is a good it's way more sort of hyper violent than it needs to be, but I don't know, just something about that adds to the mood and aesthetic. So I guess in that case you would say, well, it's not mindless because it adds to mood and aesthetic. So I've just answered my own charge there.
Yeah. I'm going to stress that what I just said was not a hard and cut rule. There'll always be exceptions where you can simply have a film that is purely graphic violence, that is very stylized, and that in itself can justify it. But for me, like when I think of a lot of the anime, like we watched Angel Cop for Christ's sake. And
We're still not done with Angel
exploding.
Cop.
Yeah, people's heads were like evaporating and all that, and they were being turned into, what you'd find in the Morrison's Butchers section. But the thing is, that was happening, and it was there just because it was there. Its presence and inclusion was just because, hey, let's have a look, let's just make everyone's head explode because this is the aesthetic of shows and like media back then.
Mood.
It's not actually there for any legitimate reason. It's just so stupid and pointless.
It's because this show is dark, Shadon. Darkness is is the mood. It's our aesthetic.
We've got too much red ink.
Don't question.
They had a fire sale on it. We need to use it all. Just throw it everywhere. It'll be fine.
Blood.
And so when it comes to Vinland Saga and what Trickster is saying...
Blood is the new black. Sorry, I just had to say it.
Oh, good God. Blood Orange? Blood Orange is the new black? Hey, there we go. There we go. So just to address Trickster's point specifically in regards to Vinland Saga, like, I hope I made it clear in the previous discussion we had about that particular scene that springs to my mind when this point comes up, of Thorfinn like being covered in blood versus Askeladd being covered in blood, and the contrast between their reactions to it, where Thorfinn starts screaming like he's just, like his soul is being flayed alive, whereas Askeladd's just got like, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Is this yours? Is this yours? Oh, I'm so sorry for taking your blood. I didn't mean to do that. What type are you? Oh, positive. Very nice, very nice. I'll just leave that. Bye-bye. So there's that, and then I mentioned, of course, the scene at the end of the episode where older Thorfinn, like not fully older Thorfinn, is stained with blood on the side of his face and his hair, and it looks like he's diseased. That's the visual image I took from that.
It's a good shout.
So in Vinland Saga's case, I think the violence has an intent behind it. Because indeed, Thorfinn's journey will be to try and escape this brutality, and the violence is this ever-present reminder of that being there, but also perhaps a reminder of his familiarity. Like, we take notice of it because we're like, very happy, comfy, audience behind the fourth wall, just watching all this blood being spilled everywhere. Like, holy shit! Like, fucking hell, we're on a killing spree here. But Thorfinn, of course, is like, I mean, I'm not going to pretend that, because I think you could even make a lot of arguments that we are overly desensitized to violence anyway. For my part, I'm perfectly fine with it as is. But, sometimes it can help to be a little self-critical of it. Maybe, there's too much of it in certain shows versus others. I think that insofar as censorship goes, I don't think there's any broad conscious attempt to censor violence in anime overall. I think it's just more of a cultural shift of change of times, like reflecting like what we see in Western media, and also changing tastes and attitudes. As you said, like, a lot of that stuff came out on OAVs. So that's a market, like, for people who already wanted it. Whereas public broadcast, there are standards and such. But don't take my discussion I've just given you as anything even approaching comprehensive on, like, violence in, media and particularly in anime, and how it's handled versus how it should be. As I say, for me, my litmus test is there an intent to it? Even if it's just stylistic, is it, an ultra-violent action, slickly produced action flick? If that's the case, and the action's thrilling and exciting, I can get behind that. If it's there just because for some reason they decide to, have this guy's head evaporate and have his eyeballs roll around inside a glass of lemonade for no fucking reason, no thank you. It's a bit daft. Although I will say that I don't react as aggressively to like ultra-violence that isn't justified in anime as I do to, say, unjustified fan service. I mean, you've heard me bang my drum about that enough times now. I won't bore you stuff of it again. So I hope that's a reasonable answer for you there, Trickster. But yeah, I think that the violence has an intent in Vinland Saga, and that's why I'm perfectly okay with it being here, even if it is, as you say, like, there's just buckets of the shit flying everywhere.
So, for my part, I'm not going to pretend either to be, like, someone who has really paid attention to this trend and followed it over the years, because so much of, I think, what I consume will be stuff like violent anime that has its violence put back in. You know what I mean? Like, because there's a difference between the broadcast version and then oftentimes the Blu-ray version will go back and erase all the fog and put the blood in there and things like that. So like there's that as a consideration. And like I've seen, like I can't separate what I've seen from like, okay, did I see the broadcast version of that or did I see the Blu-ray version of that with the violence and sex put back in? So there's that aspect. I haven't been like watching like since 2006 like nearly enough anime. I'm sure there's like super violent anime we're just not aware of, you know, that have aired in that time. So like I have a lot of knowledge gaps on this, but I do think like we do have here like a really visible and well-regarded show that is even if it's not pushing the envelope, like it is it's right up against the boundary in terms of violence in anime that is shown on television. I think, like Felix mentioned in chat, like I think the historical aspect of the story has a lot to do with why it's there and why it's probably being allowed, because it was an incredibly violent time, and for it to feel authentic, it needs this violence.
But bear in mind that historical authenticity should fall second to telling a story. But even then, the blood and violence still serves that purpose.
Exactly. This is exactly the point I was just going to say. It was, and like you were saying, it's not just that the violence is an accurate sort of thing. It's that it is important to the story they're trying to tell. The brutality is necessary. So I think those things put together, you have a good justification if you're the studio for putting it out there like this. You know, it's funny, like Trickster's question has got me thinking. So we seem to have had a couple times this year, like especially in Noitamina, creators getting to just push the envelope in terms of content, like the whole Sarah's and my, you know, butts and sexual imagery and like all the gay shit, like just so over the top, like such that you think, wow, like how did he pitch this? Because usually, you know, it's conservative people in the chairs that you're pitching to. But
Ikahara gonna Ikahara.
He just lied about it, or didn't tell the whole story.
Ikahara's gonna Ikahara, and by God, you ain't stopping him.
Did his fucking thing, and then you have this with the violent side of things. So it's an interesting like thing to note about 2019. I think in anime is that this kind of content, it seems to be like we seem to be like pushing the envelope, for lack of a better phrase, which is really cool.
Yeah. If I may provide a slight spoiler for a current patron-only project that I'm doing at the moment, but because it will be relevant, Akiken, which I've recently watched.
Sorry, I can't help it. Sorry. You did Tillulabelle? Shouts to you.
I'm going to ignore what you just said. But like, there's a scene in that I won't go into too much detail because you'll actually, you know, listen to my whole cast on it, where the main character is violently injured and he's bleeding everywhere. It's a fucking ecchi comedy show. There's a certain thing called tone that you need to appreciate and understand, even if you're doing a daft piece of shit like that. And it was so fucking jarring. So there is a time, even, you know, when ultra-violence or even just plain old violence is not suited because it doesn't fit the subject matter. Like I said, it's not a question of it just simply being ultra-violence a problem, it's a question of the execution application. To answer your question, AG, I would similarly feel that it's part of the aesthetic and part of the thematic purposes. Like when you see, I keep thinking back to that scene of I can't remember the kid's name.
I can't remember the little brother.
Miko's little brother, when he transforms as devil, and you have that long, drawn-out scene of his father, like, deciding if he's going to kill him or not. And it's torturous to watch because it's emotionally draining for it to go on for so long, to see him just waver back and forth. And then, bang, he is blown away by the military in a split second. And he is utterly turned into red mist. And it's shocking. It reinforces the shock of what just happened and the brutality of the military doing that to someone who's grieving for the loss of his son and his wife. And it's just snuffed out like that. The violence accentuates the the trauma that you feel, as opposed to him just simply disappearing and never being seen again. It serves a purpose. There's intent, as opposed to, like I say, oh well, we got a load of red paint in the fire sale, blah 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 blah, fire it everywhere, fucking whatever.
Also, a lot of it is very cartoonish violence in Crybaby, like especially early on, and it's. I think it says a lot of that show that it gets us to emotionally invest to the point where those things hurt so bad. I mean, we're still talking about that scene a year and a half later, and it's still hard to think about.
I'm going to be talking about the scene in probably 20 years' time, if not longer than that.
Amy, since I haven't seen you around the chat, I don't know if you are a regular for Warui Deshou, but we did a podcast, and some bits of it are on our YouTube channel, but you could find on our SoundCloud, and you'll see a link in the scroll at the bottom. We did a Devilman Crybaby episode with our friends from Anime is Lit. It's one of my favorite, one of my favorite podcast episodes we've ever done. If you want to know our extended 4-hour thoughts on Devilman Crybaby, check out that episode.
You want some Devilman Crybaby podcast ASMR? We got you covered.
Now, you may be asking because you didn't like Crybaby. In that case, you can skip that episode because we loved it and we talk good things about it. But yeah, that's there if you are interested. Next patron question.
All right, so we're gonna move on to something a bit lighter now.
I've got a Google note file here that I've written down answers for this. Ask the question.
So what is the name of Askeladd and Bjorn's music album? This comes from Feowulf, who submitted to us a still image of the scene in which he, Askeladd and Beowulf, are on the boat, and Askeladd's like this with his crown on and his giant king's robe, and it just says parental advisory, explicit content. So we'll open this to the chat. What would the name of this album be? What would it be?
So this, first of all, Theowulf, my guy, my person, thank you. This is the fucking shit that I live for. This is my favorite. So like I said, I have spent time yesterday and today coming up with names for this album. Because it is, and the parental advisory sticker made me think of shopping for hip-hop albums in the 90s, CDs that were fucking heinously expensive, like $25 for a fucking CD back in the day. It was such a robbery. But okay. And yes, picture, I can't, I don't want to take our faces off the screen and fuck up, risk fucking up OBS to find the link and post it.
I will go one better, and I will do that for you.
Okay. If you're allowed to post links in the YouTube chat, I hope that you are.
I'm sure I can make it happen.
Yeah. So picture Askeladd decked out in all of his rings and his crown is gold. Bjorn sitting on top of a treasure box. You got the big parental advisory sticker in the corner. Here are some candidates for the name of this album, which I took to be a hip-hop album. You may believe it is more of a Viking metal thing. But here we go. Tell me which one of these you like best, Shadon.
Oh, good God.
Bjorn to Mac. Bjorn to Mac.
Okay.
Straight Out of Vinland.
Okay, that's definitely up there. But carry on. I know you have more.
The Mead Father.
Ooh, good.
Odin Forgives, We Don't. It's probably that's my favorite one. Odin Forgives, We Don't. This is a deep cut right here. This is a deep cut for fans of Wu-Tang Clan standout rhymesman, the Jizza. Liquid Ores. Okay, not liquid swords, but liquid ores. Odin's Eyes on Me. As a nod to the sort of pseudo spiritual element found in a lot of hip hop. And finally, the rune print. Those are the candidates for this album. It sounds like you like Straight Outta Vinland the best.
Oh my god, Straight Outta Vinland is definitely my personal favorite. I'm
gonna make a poll out of this when we finish.
Oh, for sure. Blinkard's going to be one there. Get rich or die rated.
Thank you. I was really trying to come up with one for that, but I couldn't do it. Thank you, Blinkaji. That's superb. That is superb.
Oh my god. The only one I've come up with in the time since is a play on a System of a Down album, which is Pillage This Album.
Okay.
Because they had to steal this album.
Yes, that's a
best
good
album title, or the best album titles ever. Oh man, like that. Fucking hell, Askeladd, you son of a bitch.
James Beckett, friend of the pod in our Discord, mentioned that Askeladd had to have the $signs.
Oh, of course.
Which is great. The miseducation of Thorfinn.
Can you imagine him having like two like knuckle dusters, one that has Ask E and then LADD on here? Mm-hmm. Askeladd. You would.
That'd be awesome.
I can see it.
Fucking awesome.
I can see it.
Man. How about Thor's is Dead? They just called their album Thor's is Dead, and it was like a Thor's diss record. That would rule. I'm sorry. God, what a great question. Oh, Theowulf. Thank you.
Oh, man.
You too can ask questions like this if you are a patron on patreon.com/Warui Deshou. If you subscribe at the Scythe Master tier or above, you will be able to ask us questions. You'll be assigned the lovely inquisitive patron role in our Discord and able to ask us these questions, which we have to answer no matter how silly they are, as proven by what we've just done.
Indeed. All right, so that otherwise I think covers all the material we want to cover about episode 7 Normandy. What we did do last time, for brevity's sake, but we will do this time, is we'll rate the episode.
Yeah.
I think we've got plenty of choice things to make joke ratings about, I think, this particular time around. So, Doc, I will swing it over to you first and let you put your racing down.
All right. All right. I had to just write backwards very quickly, which is the thing that I'm not very good at. So it's going to look pretty rough. But I have decided to give this episode, which was, I thought, really good. I thought, like you mentioned, like there were maybe one or two kind of storytelling things that did just take me out of it a tiny bit. Not because they themselves were bad. I think it's only because I knew that this was the first chapter of the manga. Maybe if I hadn't known that, it wouldn't have taken me out as much. But because I knew that, I was sort of subconsciously looking for things to be like, oh yeah, that should have been first. That would have made more sense at the beginning. Even though, what I said earlier in the stream, like, I think there is a thematic kind of thing that you can pull out of the resequencing about just there are no good guys in war, and everyone's a shithead, everyone is bad and a killer, and war makes even guys you might like into awful people, and it has all the awful people too that are unredeemable.
War never changes.
Yeah, thank you, Fallout. It had that incredible scene of the Vikings running across the plains and over the hills carrying their ships, which is just perfection for me. It just was so good. So all that being said, and we got great moments with Thorfinn. He looked really tired. In my notes, I have that the episode title of this, instead of Normani, was Thorfinn Looks Tired. Because he just looked very just deadpan most of the time. So yeah, I'm gonna give this 4.25 dragons coming over the waterfall out of 5.
All right. I feel kind of bad giving this episode the rating I'm going to give it, but I'm not going to lie. I think the one thing I should probably elaborate on is that okay, what does this episode accomplish narratively? The duel's on at some point. It's going to happen. But other than that, not much of the plot is moved forward. Now, the thing is, though, as I've said, like, this episode makes much more sense, in my opinion. Like, you could actually watch this as the very first one and then go to episode 1 and play it from there. I think you could do that without any real issue. And to me, it would be rated much more highly at that position in the show's chronology if that's where it was. But it's not. It's here now, and so some of its luster is indeed lost. For me, as a result, for all the various things I've said, plus the fact that it seems intent by accident on glamorizing Askeladd when he is still a complete wanker, and we can't forget that. We have to be careful of remembering that. I am in the end going to give this episode, it was still good, still insane, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to give it 3.75.
Oh, how dare you! You went below 4 stars.
3.75 pencil-shaped rams out of 5.
You did look like a brown coloring pencil.
Lead tips.
No. Oh,
although I will offer you an alternate rating for if this had been the very first episode. I would give that probably more closer to a 4.25, as you say, or maybe even a 4. Because that's very clearly where a lot of its intent is, and some, and where it'd been much more effective in setting us up, as well as being a baller intro. Like, because at that point, we can at least, without the burden of prior knowledge, unironically get on board with Askeladd doing awesome shit. But we can't do that now because we are burdened with that prior knowledge. Not entirely.
I mean, yeah. Your
mileage may vary.
Right.
I'm gonna get a gigantic sign for that.
You're such a foul being for rating this below 4 stars. I can't even explain. You're the true villain of Vinland Saga discourse. I don't know. Like I see the complaints. I don't think anything you're saying is wrong. Although, like I said, it's different ways to kind of justify it in my head. But I don't know. I think I just liked it. I think I just liked what was there, maybe more than you.
Your mileage may vary.
And
it needs to be like the more you know star.
So I think I maybe just liked it more. I was thinking, like I said on our Given series this past time when we were talking about episode 6, which you can also get on Patreon, by the way. If you were a tier Bando subscriber, you can get those when they come out, or wait for the 2-week delay and get them for free.
Do it.
I was saying that show, due to its pace, I'm enjoying the week-to-week viewing and mitigates a lot of the pace-related problems that I would have with it otherwise. I think this show is the opposite. Like, if I didn't have to be reviewing this every week, like, I would wait for it to end and just watch all of it. It feels like it's such a marathonable show. And this would just kind of be... I wouldn't just sort of focus on it in isolation so much. I think it would sort of work its way into the flow of the story better in my brain than... Yeah. All right, let's look at this 26 minutes of footage. And it's just, the pitfalls of episodic.
Very compartmentalized approach. Yeah, things slot into the bigger picture, certainly. But yeah, your mileage is going to vary. To answer your question there, Amy, I think that we'll probably need to come back to you next time on this. So if you want us to come back for episode 8 when we cover that on Vinland Saga,
the Ocho.
The Ocho. We'll cover it as a side point at the end. If you can just let us know before we go, of course, what you mean by meta breaking. Like, what is the meta? What is being broke? Just so we're working off the same set of standards here.
Yeah. Or if you want to like tweet at us at Warui Deshou later, or email us at Gmail, whatever you want to do to elaborate, then we can talk about it next time.
For sure. Anyway, as always, everyone, thank you very much for joining us this fine evening to discuss Vinland Saga episode 7. We'll be back next week to cover episode 8. We'll be back this week for Given. I am currently in the process of putting together my script and, probably excess of 45-minute long, screaming agony rant about Akikin. If you're interested in that and a lot of other juicy content we've done, do please consider becoming a patron for as little as $2 a month. You have access to the good stuff. You're $3 up. If you have discovered us through SoundCloud, iTunes, or the like, please feel free to give us a like, a subscribe, or a rating, whatever's appropriate for the service, just to help our discoverability. We really appreciate that. To answer your question, it can vary when we stream. It depends on personal circumstances. But as Doc has very nicely pointed out in chat there, Mondays and Tuesdays are typically our day. You can keep an eye on our Twitter feed for when we'll be doing it. But yeah, otherwise, I just want to again thank everyone for joining us. We will indeed be back next week. Until then, of course, as we're always very fond of saying on this show, because we're such dirty Macross stands, well, embrace each other, everyone, to the ends of the universe. Have a cracking evening.